Welcome to Florida Education News. My name is Dr. Tony Arza, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Brittany Lyssy, School Board Candidate in Hillsborough County. Thanks so
Yes.
much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So, look, we had the opportunity to sit down before and talk a little bit about you and your background and why you're running for school board, and we wanted to sit down again. Your race is a pretty intense race, and
Yes.
it's an important decision that voters are going to be making. So, we wanted to give them more of an opportunity to get to know a little bit about what you're seeing on the campaign trail and what are you hearing from parents and families. So, just kind of want to start off and get a sense of what's happening. We're 30 days out from the election, and what is it that you're seeing in your communication with the parents and families and the voters in Hillsborough County? Could you share a little bit?
Yes. So, like I mentioned the last time, I have been out there in the community, knocking those doors, talking to voters every chance I can get at the coffee shop, at, camp drop-offs when I drop my kids off, just making sure I talk to everybody. So what I'm hearing the most, right, is that as we gear up for back to school, parents really want to be involved. And they're still feeling like there is a boundary there where they're not getting the communication from the schools and they're not getting the communication with their teachers. And they really, really want to be involved. And so we need to make sure that we are a champion for students and parents and families, right? The school system serves everybody in the community, not just the kids and the teachers in the classroom. So including those parents, I think, will make a huge change in the public school education system, especially here in Hillsborough County. And that's what they really want. And then on the other side, I've been talking with a lot of teachers, right? Because they're also gearing up for back to school. And they say, the same thing across the board is that they want to see a more uniform and consistent disciplinary policy put in place so that they can deal with the disruptions in the classroom and feel more supported so they can do what they love most, which is teaching and really keeping them at the front of the classroom and supporting them. So that's what the community is talking about. And so we're excited to hopefully make some changes for them.
A lot of times in school board races, they don't have clear what's at stake in a school board race. And it sometimes feels like, you're choosing between the same kind of things, right? Do you like, red delicious apples or do you like Fuji apples? I think that the question that people want to know and want to hear from the candidates is, what do you believe is at stake in this school board race?
Yes. So, when you're talking about schools, you are talking about the future of our city, of our county, the state, right? And maybe even the nation. So that is what is at stake, is our children's lives, right? The next generation. And so as a mom, I'm a mom of 3 young kids who will be coming up through the system, right? So I have a vested interest in everything from early childhood education all the way up through high school, because every decision that is being made right now is going to affect our children's lives, for the next 5 or 10 years or even longer than that. So that's what's really at stake. And then when you're talking, there's a lot of voters who say, well, I don't have kids anymore. They already graduated. Well, you still need to be concerned about who is sitting on that board, right? Because that's where the workforce comes from. The workforce comes from the public school system. Your tax dollars are still paying for the public school system. So if you don't agree with what's happening in the public school system, then this is your chance to really make a difference and let your voice be heard.
Yeah, and what do you think? I think everyone would agree that education is important. It's important to educate our kids. I don't think that that's the divisive thing, right? In any school board race, the question kind of becomes, what separates you from your opponent? I think that's a question that everyone always has, and voters want to know, at least to hear from the candidates themselves. What do you think makes you different from your opponent?
Yes. Well, I gotta say it again. I am a mom. I have 3 young boys. So that alone, means I am so interested in everything that's happening in the public school system and how that will impact the lives of children and families, going forward. But I also have no allegiances to anybody currently on the school board or any vendors that the school system works with. So, we're seeing in the race that there are some, candidates that are involved in the system already. They have lifelong ties to the public school system and a lot of the vendors that we work with, which seems like a conflict of interest, if I'm being honest. But I do not have that, right? I am an attorney. I have spent my career working in education policy. I have a background in contract negotiation and understanding, how we can get the best deal for the taxpayers. And I'm not beholden to any certain company, so I can make sure that we're really getting the best deal for our taxpayers and the best outcomes for our students and families.
And you speak about getting good deals for taxpayers. Everyone wants the government and local government to work for them,
Right.
right? All the individuals and families are struggling now with the economy. They're struggling to provide for their families, and they want to know what can a school board race do for me? How can a school board race have an impact on me? What are some ways that you think that you being on the school board, you can actually positively contribute to the local economy and influence the local economy on the board?
Yes, and what I don't think people really realize is that the Hillsborough County public school system has a $4.4 billion budget, billion with a B. I don't think that many people realize that, and they are the largest employer in the county. So that alone, right, means that the school system is operating this massive infrastructure that impacts local economy every day. But then also as a board member, right, we're in charge of looking at contracts and bringing in the vendors. So I would like to make sure that we're bringing in as many local vendors as possible, local from Hillsborough County, and then definitely local from the state. We do not need to be, reaching out to different states and bringing in workers or even foreign workers, right? We should really be pulling from what we have here in Hillsborough County. So that way, the taxpayers are paying for the school system to exist, and then we can give that back to them by hiring them, hiring, their families, and making sure that we're providing living wages for our local community to thrive.
Yeah, something I've always thought about is that when you do have a local economy and an economic engine like a school district, those teachers shop in our grocery stores,
Right.
right? If they make renovations to their homes, they hire plumbers, they hire HVAC, right? All of the local economy, all the jobs are created by the money staying here. So I think that is a really important point. Another thing that we've seen in some recent polls is that only 4% of voters, when asked who do they trust most to make decisions in the interest of students, only 4% say school board members. And I think we're seeing that across the board when it comes to institutions and government in general. There's a little bit of this distrust of the institution saying, I don't really believe that the government and government interests are making decisions in the best interest of kids. What would you do on the board, and what would make you different, and why should the voters trust you if you're elected?
Yes. Again, I am a mom. That I will always decide on any issue in front of me um, with that first, right? How is this going to affect the children? But then also, I did not come from this system. My opponents have been working in Hillsborough County for a long time, right? They are institutional candidates, and I am coming from the outside hoping to bring a new perspective. We do not have currently any lawyers that have a background in policy that sit on the board. I don't think we have any lawyers at all that sit on the board. So to have a different perspective and a different viewpoint of how we can affect change here in Hillsborough County is something that we really don't have. It's kind of an echo chamber where they have all worked together and they have been in the same roles within the district for a long time. And so they just all go with the status quo. And that's where we're seeing, right? People are unhappy with the transparency of the budget. People are unhappy with the parental involvement that's allowed in the schools. People are just very unhappy with the direction of our school system. But then, the candidates, they claim that they're different, but then they just go in and they vote the exact same way because they are part of the system. I am not from that system, so I can come in and be maybe a little bit of a disruptor and a game changer and really get something done that really benefits the children and the families of Hillsborough County.
Something I always think about when I think about education, and I think it's important that everyone thinks about, is what do we hope to accomplish, right? By the end of a child's life in our schools, in our public school system, what do we hope to accomplish? What do we hope that they've received in the life of their education? And so I kind of want to ask you, when you think about a graduate from Hillsborough County, what is it you think that we as a community, as a state, as human beings should be hoping that our students receive from us in terms of their education?
Yes, well, they should not only receive a quality academic education, but they should also receive the skills that they need to be successful in life, right? So we know that some kids are going to go to college and some children aren't. So we need to make sure that they have the skills that they need no matter what path they're taking, right? We need those trade and vocational programs, and we need students that can sit here and have conversations like this and be personable. We need students that can run a household and that can cook and that can do all of the different skills. And that art has been lost on the public school system recently. It's all, IB, AP, dual enrollment, and that stuff is great. But what we really, really need to do is make sure that our children are successful enough to go into the military, to go into a trade, to go to college, or to just enter the workforce as soon as they graduate from high school. So that way they can be productive members of society and then provide for their families and ultimately stay here in Hillsborough County. We're seeing, right, that a lot of graduating high schoolers, they cannot afford to live here because the cost of living has risen so quickly. And that's not okay, right? They were raised here. We want to keep them here in the community. One thing that I have been doing a lot of is working with some private businesses that would really like to see some public-private partnerships with the school system to provide specialized trade and vocational programs. One would be a maritime program since we have the port here. The program that we had here in Hillsborough County was canceled recently. And so they are so excited to come back into the schools if we can make the policies inviting for them and easy for them. They want to pay for it. They want to be involved, but there's so much blocking that. So if we can bring in the community to really care about what's happening in our schools, then they will also reap the benefits of our successful students graduating and going out into the economy and working and helping build the community that built them, right? So really just seeing them successful. We want them to be able to look people in the eye and have conversations and go to a job interview and feel confident that they can really get that job. I mean, that's how I graduated from high school, and I'm sure you did as well. So we just want the best for every child.
Well, look, thanks so much for sitting down with us. It's been a real pleasure. Good luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thank you.